for you to share your thoughts on the musical Mandela effect. Buckle up your seatbelts, folks, because tonight we blast through the musical notes of time and understand the changes that may or may not be happening for you Saturday, December 7th, 2019. Now, I'm extremely excited for tonight. I've looked forward to this evening all week. The last time Moneybags was here was a mind-blowing experience. Literally, my mind had been blown. And if you're new to the Mandela effect, and you're here tonight with little understanding of how you could be affected, prepare to have your mind blown. Because for some of us, music and the way we remember it is the fabric that weaves our memories together, woven around those we're most fond of. Music has the power to bring us all together. And as our guest is going to get into oodles of his research of the musical types, these changes, at least one of them, will affect you. In March of 2016, my guest, Moneybags73, describes being hit with the Mandela effect like a ton of bricks. Since that time, he's devoted thousands of hours of research and over 400 videos to this incredible phenomenon. Please welcome to the program again, Mr. Moneybags73. Please welcome to the program again. How you doing, Moneybags?
Great. How's it going?
It's going well. It's a pleasure to have you back again, sir. It's always a fun time. And like I said, I've been looking forward all week to this show. I can tell you that some of our listeners have no idea who you are. So can you give us just a little recap? Can you just take us back a little bit to that moment, as you say, when you got hit by a ton of bricks?
Yeah, well, it was thanks to my son who had watched a movie on YouTube, and he asked me a series of questions, and I got them all wrong. This was around March of 2016. And I had a YouTube channel at the time that I started in 2009. I had about 10,000 subscribers talking about financial information. And I was, like you said, I was struck like, I was hit like a ton of bricks with this phenomenon. I got all the questions he asked me wrong, and I didn't understand what he was doing to me. So I started down the Mandela effect rabbit hole, and it's just been an incredible journey. I totally stopped the financial information and have just been covering the Mandela effect ever since.
Now, I just want to say that we're simulcasting and mirroring tonight's broadcast, both on Rippin' Rabbit Hole and Moneybags73. So I just want to shout out to both of the chat rooms on YouTube. Press a 1 in the chat room if we're coming through okay and everything is working for you. Now, Moneybags, recently there's been a film released, and since you were here last, this film has now made it mainstream, and the name of the film is The Mandela Effect. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the title.
And since you were here last month, you've now seen this film?
Yes, I watched it this morning, as a matter of fact, with my family.
And there has been a response throughout the community that I've observed in the last couple days. What is the overall impression of this film?
From what I've seen, it's kind of split. There's a group of people that didn't think they portrayed the phenomenon well, and then there's ones that did. Personally, I enjoyed the film. I watched with my family. We must have paused it about 25 times throughout the film. I have a lot to say. I wanted to make sure
Yes.
they knew how I felt at different times. I connected with the main character. I felt like what he was going through in the beginning of the film, the research and the trying to tell people what was going on and the ridicule he was receiving. I felt like him. I connected with him. Now, I noticed 10 to 15 Mandela effects in the movie. I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone, but there was there could have been more. I realized the movie was written in 2016. I think it was supposed to be released in 2017. So it didn't have a lot of the more impactful type stuff that could have been, they could have showed geography changes, Bible changes, anatomy changes, historical events. So that wasn't in the film. It was a lot of the stuff that came out initially, 2015, 16, but I enjoyed the film. It got a little crazy near the end. I thought it was just going to be based on simulation theory, but it did kind of touch on timelines changing and reality shifting a little bit in the end. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy actually, but I enjoyed it.
That's, something that a lot of the people have kind of speculated that perhaps you're a subject in the film. Somebody had even gone so far as to say that they thought they saw one of your videos in the film.
Yeah, well, I had heard that maybe my voice made it in the film, but the voices, when the guy was doing his research on the internet about the Mandela effect, the voices I heard and the people I saw him coming across, I didn't recognize any of them. So to me, they were all actors. Where it could have been my voice, sort of sound like me. It was either the tone or pitch was changed, or it was slowed down, or it wasn't me. I can't even really tell. It seems like a video I did. I'd have to do some research. It could have been me, but it seems like they changed my voice if it was me.
Now, one of the things that we've noticed through the Art Bell Archive show here is that we take subjects that Art Bell had at one point in time, we dust off the files, and we kind of bring them up to date. And that's kind of what brought us together, is that we did a show last month where we went down into the archives and we found out that Art actually began talking about the Mandela effect in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's what connected us together, is because we tagged that up, Mandela effect. And I really knew very little about the subject. And not only have you successfully blown my mind, but you've made me a believer. So I want to say top hats off to you. I want to thank you for the work that you've done, and thank you for being here tonight to express what you've found in the relation of music Mandela effects, which I requested, and I wanted to dive deep into this. But before we get there, I want to point out you were recently on a program. I'm sorry, the name skips me right now, but you were on somebody's YouTube broadcast in the last week, and you were with Cynthia Larson, who was also a guest on the Art Bell AM Coast to Coast show. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Cynthia has turned the Mandela effect into a bit of a science. And one of the things that she and Art spoke about was the importance of being able to log and date changes that you recognize as within. So, for instance, tonight we're going to talk about a lot of music changes that you've uncovered. And it's important that the listeners at home understand that to understand this effect and this phenomenon in the way that it's intended to be understood, you really have to understand when and how the changes take place. And Cynthia suggested, with Art Bell on that program, that we should be logging when we note the changes. So if today, for instance, your creation story talks about the difference between lucky and luckies, we should mark today in 2019 that it's what it is. And that, to me, is scientific research. And to me, what you're doing with your videos and the Moneybags 73 channel is scientific research as well. And for the listeners that don't understand, let me explain. Moneybags puts up over 400 videos of noted changes. And he asks his community, which is a very large community, I think you're over 40,000 subscribers, to vote either a thumb up or a thumb down on whether they agree with the subject of the change. And you have logged all of this, not just in music, but in all of the 400 changes. So what types of changes do we see? We're going to get to music in just a second, but I know that the last time you were here, there were several things we left out of the discussion. Things like geographical changes, things like changes to the human body. Can you explain a little bit more about what it is that you're documenting in these thumbs up and thumbs down videos?
Yes, well, I've gone through and documented all types of geography changes, historical events that have changed, anatomy changes like the kidneys, the placement of the kidneys, the placement of the liver now having two lobes as opposed to one that I recall, the heart having been on a little to the left, now being dead center. There's all types of changes with cars, famous movie quotes, television shows. It's all over the board. There's changes in everything that we see and everything that we look at and everything that we hear, but it's an individual journey. So I decided to document my memories and right away went with the voting videos because I realized we're not all experiencing this. And then sometimes we are and sometimes we aren't. It's all over the board. It's not just, people get mad. They're like, this is not a change. What are you saying? This. I know this. I worked here and I know this. Well, that's fine. It might not have changed for you, but it did for me and those 10,000 people over there. So we're not seeing all the changes and it's not happening at the same time. I've noticed that a group of us were seeing things in 2016, but I'm having people come comment on my videos and on my channel now saying, hey, just last week, I saw it as such and such. We noticed that changing years ago. So it's all over the board.
Your channel and your community is fantastic. I have to say, the support and the understanding from the community that you've assembled really is passionate about this subject. And I can say that with things like the movie and things like this program, making it more mainstream for people, it's important to understand that you are not the movie-based character. You are grounded. You have a family. You research this stuff because you have a genuine interest in understanding what's taking place, like the rest of your community, and myself included. And if you're joining us tonight and this is your first exposure to the Mandela effect, like I said, be aware your mind is about to be blown. And if you do not want your mind blown, you may wish to seek out an alternative source of news this evening. I asked Moneybags to focus on music-related effects. What I got back was 3 pages of notes, Moneybags. And if you're listening tonight, either live or on demand, in the show notes in both of our videos, I've listed a link to tonight's show notes where I've posted photos of just the musical effects that you've documented and their thumbs up and thumbs down votes. And you have over 50 music Mandela effect changes on this list. Is there any end?
I don't believe so, no. This is ongoing. A few different times throughout the past 3 years, I thought that it stopped, and it seemed to have stopped for me. But this is never ending. People continued to say, hey, this is still happening. And it had a resurgence. It's almost like we're being hit with waves, as they peak in the troughs of the waves. We're just getting hit, and it's different for all of us. We're each experiencing this differently. So it doesn't stop. I have, some of those notes you're showing is about 80% of the lyrics changes that the community has found. I don't want to take credit for finding all this stuff. I found some of them, but a lot of times I'll see someone do a video and then, I'll send people their way and credit them for finding the change, and then I'll do something on it. I also have a whole list of changes that I want to discuss this evening about the names of the bands that appear to be different. So yeah, it's just, there's so much. I blew my own mind last night going through all this, and it's just, I couldn't even handle
Well, I'm excited.
Trying to go through it all was just so much.
I know. And when I saw your notes, I was like, this is unbelievable. There are like 5 shows here. So let's start with the classics. Let's start with the top 3 that you've identified from this list. You have developed a very clear voting strategy. Your community votes with a thumb up or a thumb down based on the direction that you explain your understanding of the effect to be. What is the number one, the cherry on the top of the music Sunday?
Well, it's going to be one that many people have heard of, but I think it is one that affects a lot of people. And it's going to have to be Queen's "We Are the Champions." And I've heard about it hundreds of times.
Queen, or is it Queen's? Because now you're blowing my mind already. Is it Queen's or is it Queen?
It's the song "We Are the Champions" by Queen. Maybe
Put a 1 in the chat room, folks, if you just heard him say Queen's, because I want to make sure I keep my sanity this evening. So you're saying that Queen, "We Are the Champions" is now part of the Mandela effect. It deserves its own chapter. Okay, Vanessa VA says she heard it. Queens too. Perhaps there's a new Mandela effect just created in the moment. Is that how it works? It did happen the last time you were on, by the way. I will point out to those listening, the last time that Moneybags 73 was here, I inadvertently referred to him as Moneybag 76. And we had witnessed in the comments Mandela effect changes within people that had viewed that video. Some people claiming they heard me say 73, that switched to 76, and then 76 and 73. But that's not the first time that conversation came up. You've even found this in your own channel prior to us even meeting, correct? The whole 76 is a whole nother episode in itself.
Yes, I had a period of time where I was questioned by hundreds of people if I changed the name of the channel, and I haven't changed the name in 10 years. Just the last 2 days, I had 4 people ask me if the capital B was once a lowercase b, and I stick to the fact I've never changed the name of the channel in 10 years.
B for Burgos is clarifying the apostrophe NS Queens. So thank you, Burgos, for pointing that out. So Queens, "We Are the Champions." This has changed.
Yeah, the end of the song, "No time for losers, because we are the champions of the world," is what I recall. But you
Absolutely.
go listen to the
That's
original.
the way it ends.
It ends, it fades out, because "we are the champions" fades out to nothing.
No,
There's no of the world.
Come on.
Now
Are you kidding?
There are some live performances where it's sung "of the world" at the end. So
Now,
but I
I'm
didn't
on
listen to live
Google.
performances at 10 years old on the radio. I was listening to.
No, now she wants to listen to me. I'm on Google. I have the YouTube "We Are the Champions of the World." You're telling me that if I listen to the end, I'm not going to hear this?
No, it's just going to fade out. If you're on, I guess, like the studio version, it just fades out. What would have been, what's on the LP?
Okay. What was on the record? Because
Yeah.
I actually remember playing this on jukeboxes and half of the bar being able to sing this at the end of the song. And you're saying it's not there.
No. Well, some of these things flip flop.
Okay. Mind blown. OMG. OMG.
Yeah.
Now, I know because I've sang it with people. I remember Freddie Mercury ending this song because we are the I'll even sing it. I closed it. We are the champions of the world. And you hold that note.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of voodoo magic are you doing on YouTube right now? How did you do that?
No, that's not me. That's a phenomenon. We could go on till next Sunday doing this here, or actually till next year.
But there has to be an explanation. There has to, I mean, okay, so I remember this. I have very vivid memories of singing the end of Queen, We Are the Champions, in bars with people. And like I said at the beginning of the program, music, the reason why I chose this subject is because music is that fabric that binds us together. Those emotional times when you sing songs like that are the things that memories are made of. And you're telling me that my memories are either wrong or have been changed. Which is it?
I don't believe they're wrong, and I don't believe they're false, and I don't believe they're fake. I've been being told that my memories are not real, that it's just a confabulation. I made that up. Well, we didn't make that up. The ending up. It was always there. It was, like you say, it was part of society's way of singing the song. It was always there. It was on the original album in some timeline or some reality. That's how I've learned to look at this stuff.
So there was a time when I did experience this. You're not taking that experience away from me, that memory that I shared. That happened.
I believe that that's real.
And now, as a result of something that perhaps one day in the not too distant future, the work of Cynthia and yourself may add to a formal explanation, because there isn't any formal explanation.
Well, there's a lot of explanations, but they can't all be right. So you have to pick and choose. I believe that Cynthia is a physicist, and the quantum physics that she looks at, I believe, at the bottom of what's going on. It can explain what's happening. Quantum physics is not something that most people go around discussing. It's pretty heavy, but I believe it's at the bottom what's going on. However, I believe that there's a lot going on. It's not, you can't just keep it to one subject. There's a whole lot of things at play here, and I believe it's all connected. That's why I've never come out and said, this is what's happening. I would never come out and say what's happening, because I see a whole bunch of different things at play. So
Moneybags, I gotta cut you off there. We are heading into the break. And of course, we're going to continue this discussion. And we've only so far gotten into one song. This is bizarre. And there's over 50 songs. If you haven't seen it already, click on the link at the bottom of the page tonight.
I told you. Oh, my goodness. Folks, we're going to take just a short break, and we're going to be back with Moneybags and your calls on the open lines. Wildcard line is going to be open in the second half of the program. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio. Stay tuned for live music, news, information, and talk radio.
You can help support this program by subscribing on YouTube to the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Follow along with notifications of our live shows, or see our weekly schedule at riponrabbithole.com. Thanks for being here. We will return back to the program in just a moment. Don't touch that dial.
Ripon Common Sense Radio with the Ripon Rabbit. Stick around, folks. Moneybag 73 is here tonight. We're just getting started with Mandela music.
Stay tuned for live music, news, information, and talk radio.
Last week, as a result of our reverse speech challenge, we gave away a really cool item, an origami lamp from Hair on Elite, our friends at Hair on Elite. And thanks for Dawn from Frenchville, Maine, who won that contest and received this week her origami lamp. Hair On has decided to do it again. So tomorrow night, you'll want to join us live as we'll be doing another Hair on Elite origami lamp giveaway. It's going to come to you if you're the winner tomorrow night. Absolutely free of charge and just in time for Christmas. So join us tomorrow night, Sunday night, for our anti-gravity show. We'll take a look at some bizarre technologies on the horizon, perhaps extraterrestrial technologies. That's tomorrow night here at Ripon Rabbit Hole, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. You can check our live schedule at riponrabbithole.com/live. We post our new weekly schedule every Monday night. And we'll be back again starting Thursday night next week with a whole nother lineup of rabbit holes. So we hope that you hit that subscribe button, Ripon Rabbit Hole, and follow along as we take you on these journeys through the Art Bell archives and dust off the information, dig in deeper through the rabbit holes, and find out how everything seems to in some way be connected. Anyways, tonight is Saturday. It is December 7th, 2019, and you're spending it with us, Ripon Rabbit and Moneybags 73, as we're exploring Mandela music. I wasn't kidding. I told you. Your mind is going to be blown just like mine is and continues to be, thanks to the fantastic research that our guest this evening, Moneybags, has done. And we're going to open up those lines for you now. If you'd like to speak to Moneybags, if you'd like to call in the show, the wild card line is open. It's 702-500-1658. That's 702-500-1658. Remember that number, folks, and call in now. The studio lines are open. If you've got a question or a comment about tonight's program or for our guest, Moneybags 73, now is your opportunity. Dial those phones, folks. Again, that number, 702-500-1658. That's 1658. As we get back into the program with our guest, Moneybags 73.
It's nice to have a little break every once in a while, isn't it? I've opened up the lines, and now if you have a question or a comment for Moneybags, you can do so now. Very simple to do. In fact, our first caller of the night is already here. Moneybags, are you ready to entertain some of these calls? You're on mute, Moneybags. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Sure, let's go.
No problem.
Ready.
All right, let's go to the wild card line. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead with Moneybags.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep, loud and
Where are
clear.
you from?
Vanessa, VA.
Wonderful. And you have a question or a comment for Moneybags 73?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Moneybags. I've been watching your channel since 2016 when a lot of us woke up. But I guess I just have a quick question. What is your take, Moneybags, on the whole retro causality thing playing a role in the cause of this Mandela effect?
Yeah, I don't put much into the retro causality myself.
Now, I'm a newbie, so caller, I'm going to clarify. What exactly is this definition that she speaks of, Moneybags?
Can you specify what you mean by that exactly?
Caller, could you specify what you mean exactly?
Yeah, so retrocausality is basically when there's an event in the future that kind of echoes back into the present or the past. It could also be defined as an event that happens or that is happening in the present that is echoing back to the past. So in our case with the whole Mandela effect thing, it could be that, and keep in mind, time, I personally feel like time is an illusion, but just so that way we can speak about it and use language, I'm using the term past and future. I personally think that there is some kind of retrocausality thing going on. I feel like it has something to do with
some
God.
sort of a residue, caller, almost as if, thank you, by the way, almost as if it is I think what she's trying to explain is residue, that these are residues that are left behind. Is that correct? Moneybags?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's all I've done in the last 4 years is discovering residue. But I was under the impression that the retrocausality was something else. Yeah, if we're talking about,
And I could be wrong.
she kind of confused me. She confused me with the question. I didn't quite understand it. I'm sorry.
Well, again, as we start to focus on things like what we just began to speak about with the Queen and the musical changes, Music is the fabric that holds us in our generations together and kind of brings us in a community together. And when something like this changes, it's that dual reality now, because now I'm forced to think about the way that it is, a lot like the caller said, and I'm forced to remember what the past was. It's very, very bizarre. Let's go to wild card line. Caller, you're on the air with Moneybags 73. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Moneybag? This is E-Man 31.
Hey, man, how's it going?
I've been knowing Moneybags ever since we've been on the Mandela effect, trained for a long time, and I never got a chance to thank him for all the work that he constantly do, and I'm thankful that I get a chance to thank him. If ain't nobody ever thought to thank him.
Well, you're welcome. It's good to hear from you. I've watched many of your videos. It was an incredible time we spent here on YouTube together. It's just an incredible time the last few years we've had.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, and so, what I think this Mandela effect is, and many people know, I believe they're using the quantum computer and that it's a prophecy fulfillment. Like Daniel 7:25 says that he's going to change times and laws. They was going to be given into his hand for times and dividing of time. And, I believe the Antichrist is using that as a vessel to do his bidding. And like I tell people a lot that the prophecy is being fulfilled. The increase in knowledge, exponential. And so, and I believe they don't want people to know really, but now the cat is out the bag. And so now they're trying to condition people's minds. Like everywhere you go, you hear shows talking about quantum computers or parallel universes. Almost like we got to break the ice so that when things really start to go awry, and I think they're waiting on the 5G and everything, because Google already said they have reached quantum supremacy, and I believe that's meaning that the thing
supremacy being the ultimate change in technology that is perhaps, as you suggest, caller, bringing this about. Excellent point. Thank you. Moneybags, is it possible that there is some sort of technology, or like the caller says, something that is creating this, like we spoke about with CERN? Is it possible that this effect or this phenomenon is being created as a mass level?
Very possible. In my mind, CERN could be involved. Quantum computers could be involved. And I want to say that, yes, E-Man, I agree with you that this is biblical, but I don't just look at the Bible myself. I look at a whole bunch of stuff, as I'm sure you're aware, since I know you follow the channel. So yeah, I do agree that the Bible's involved. I don't exclude the Bible in, my thoughts on this incredible phenomenon.
So let's talk a little bit about how music has continued to change, because that's the topic of the show tonight. And so far, we haven't even gotten into the first song. You brought along 50 songs. Let's set the tone for a moment with another musical Mandela effect.
Okay, let's go to Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll. Everybody knows that song. It's one of the biggest songs of the 80s. So I'm going to say the first line here, and we'll see what you recall. So the song starts out, I saw him blank there by the record machine.
I saw him blank there by the record. I saw him standing there by the record machine.
Yes, that's what I recall. You go listen to the original song now, and you will hear her sing, I saw him dancing there by the record machine. Dancing
so now
is just
Joan Jett
so out of
has
place.
changed.
Yes.
Unbelievable. I'm going to YouTube that. Well, we go to the wild card line. Caller from 360, you're on air with Moneybags 73. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I thank you for all your research. We just eat up your videos. My question to you is, when I first started waking up to all this, the Mandela effect is one of the biggest things that threw me into the awakening. You were Moneybag 76. And so my question is, how do you feel? Because you're on both sides of this Mandela effect. You're affected, and you also are someone that doesn't remember you being Moneybag 76. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's the question I wish I could ask Sally Fields and Donna Summers. So, yeah, I'm honored. I'm honored to be part of the, to be Mandela affected as a person with one of the larger channels for researching this incredible phenomenon. I feel honored by having my name join the phenomenon. It just seems.
But the caller brings up an interesting point because, again, before I even knew that you were Moneybag 76, I inadvertently referred to you. And that night, I even wrote on my show notes, not 76, Moneybag 73, because I was convinced. So the caller is pointing out that personal Mandela effects are happening for you. Even in this show tonight, we've already witnessed it. And that's the remarkable aspect, I think, that anybody that first is looking at the Mandela effect couldn't help but agree. Caller on the wild card line from 925, your first name and where are you calling from? Go ahead, you're on the air with Moneybags 73.
Hi, this is Toddler Mommy 83 from Vancouver, Washington.
Welcome, Vancouver.
Welcome.
You have a question or a comment?
I do have a question for Moneybags, and I just want to say hello. I follow you. I was wondering if you think that the Yellow Book has anything to do with some of these Mandela effects.
The Yellow Book. Does the Yellow Book have anything to do? Now, what exactly is the Yellow Book? Are you aware of what the Yellow Book is, Moneybags? I'm not too sure. Caller, is there some
I heard
specific
Yellow Book.
source?
Yellow Book or Brook?
So there is out there where they talk about Yellow Book that predicts, it gives information that has predictive futures. With that, there is a theory that you can alter the timeline or even go back to change the past.
I'm not aware of that. I've never even heard of that.
You're
talking about the phone number, Yellow Book? That's what comes to mind for me.
Well, the theory that you can, and we discussed this in an episode prior, last week, we did time machines. And there was some discussion with Doran Porter, who is also a fan of yours. And he was a guest on our show last week, and he pointed out certain things about CERN and some of the things that John Teeter, who was a alleged time traveler, who we have substantial things that indicate he actually was who he said he was. But that's a whole nother, episode. You can go back and listen to that. Very phenomenal aspects of what the caller is saying, where time, you could perhaps create a paradox, could you not? And do you feel that these types of experiments from CERN and perhaps time travel in the future from where John Teeter was from, I think it was 2038 or 2036 or something like that, could it be somebody traveling back and making these changes?
I, for a long time, ruled out time travel. I never, but everything's on the table. I always say everything's on the table for me. I believe that time travel may be happening, may have been happening for a long time, and we're just not aware of it. But to me, I was always saying that I don't think that time travel can change continents around, because I've experienced seeing continents that seem to have shifted 1,000 miles. I don't know how time travel is going to change that. So to me, it's always been a consciousness shift. I don't rule out anything that anyone brings up or that they're talking about, but I've always thought that felt like more of a consciousness shift for me.
Now, I want to play just the first part of Joan Jett here. Unbelievable. I even have the lyrics in this version. I saw him dancing there by the record machine. I was certain it was standing on the wild card line. Caller 270. You're on the air with Rippin' Rabbit and Moneybags. Go ahead. Where are you calling from and your first name?
Am I the one that's on the
caller.
air? Okay, I didn't think I would get through. I'm calling from Southern Illinois, and I just want to thank you. I've been really interested in this I didn't discover it until probably about 9 months ago. It's been very intriguing.
Okay.
Some of the songs, I am a Christian, and I just think that there is something satanic involved. Maybe all the things that are in the secular world are trying to get some people's attention, and then maybe notice the Bible changes. I'm not sure, but I've noticed in some of the songs, where the end of the world, it's gone from Queen's song. We discussed that earlier, and the Billie Jean one.
Yeah, what you're saying is that it's one thing when it's a Queen song, but when it's the physical words in the Bible that you cherish, that you witness the change to, that's when it becomes more personal for you, is what you're saying.
Correct. And I'm just wondering if it's something that a lot of people maybe aren't Christians, and maybe this will get their attention. It kind of has. I've always been a Christian, but it has gotten my attention, and I have started reading my Bible more. But some of the songs that have changed to me are kind of giving a message, like the world. The Billie Jean one, after he says, we were talking about it, mama turned to mother.
Yes.
And then the next thing he said was, the lies are now the truth. That was like the next lyric in the song. Prince, I was a really big Prince fan when I was growing up. And the beginning, this isn't one that many talk about. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate this thing called life, or electric word life. It means forever, and that's a mighty long time. But I mean to tell you, there's something else. The afterlife.
The afterlife.
That's the way I remember it.
Same
Celebrate afterlife. And now...
And you have a vivid memory because you're able to go back to not just that moment, but you recite the entire lyric.
Yes. I listened to Prince over and over. I just loved his music, and I just very, very vividly remember that. But now... celebrate has changed to get through this thing called life. Totally different meaning. And it just seems to me like there's some sort of a message. I'm a little nervous. I didn't think I'd get through, and I certainly didn't think I'd get through that quickly.
Yeah.
But I think that
You're
there are
doing well,
some
and I thank
messages.
you. So
in-
Moneybags, let's let him respond, caller. Moneybags,
Okay.
what she's saying, is there some sort of a message? Is there something, from a much greater, more spiritual level at work here? And is that something that we should be aware of and open our eyes to?
Yes, I definitely believe that we should be looking at that. I notice that all the time myself. I had
I
the
can't
Prince
hear what
song you
he's
mentioned.
saying.
Yeah, unfortunately, the caller can't hear you. So I'm going to let you listen on air, caller. Thank you so much for your call. I appreciate it. And I'm sure that you will find the answers you're looking for if you keep reading that Bible, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Moneybags, I didn't mean to interrupt, but she couldn't hear you.
Okay.
So what do you feel is the answer there? Is there something greater at work here? Go ahead.
I can see where she says that. I've had lots of people comment that over the years that, hey, it seems nefarious, it seems satanic. There's a lot of that. I agree. There's a lot of that. It's not always there. But personally, I never wanted to go to a point where I'm looking at the Mandela effect from a negative, dark spot. And so I stay positive. I believe it's a positive thing. And if I go down that road where I just thinking about how dark some of these changes are, which I 100% agree with, I have that Prince song written down here in my notes. I can see where, he wasn't talking about getting through life. He was talking about celebrating it. But now it says get through. Another one that comes to mind is California Dreamin', the Mamas and the Papas. Stopped into a church, passed along the way, got down on my knees, and I began to pray. Started sort of this. You remember started?
Yeah.
I remember began. Well, the lyric is I pretended. How's that? I pretended to pray.
Mind blowing.
So now he's going into the church pretending to pray. That goes right along with what the caller was just talking about.
Folks,
so I see it. I see it. I just don't want to concentrate on the dark side of it.
Area code 702-500-1658. That's 702-500-1658. If you've got a comment or a question for Moneybags 37. Deep stuff when you start to get into that. And I'm glad the caller brought attention to this, because this was something I wanted to actually ask you about. And as we know, this time goes so fast. But we did an episode a few weeks ago on reverse speech. And we had a doctor who studies reversing speech. And one of the episodes or one of the examples she shared with us was a Queen song. Another one, Bites the Dust. And when you reverse that lyric, another one, Bites the Dust, it apparently sounds a lot like it's fun to smoke marijuana. Now, we joked and we had banter about how this could have been a very cleverly designed, rewrite to the song. But my question is this. The phenomenon of reverse speech is absolutely there. We know that. And the rabbit holes that we follow here at ripinrabbithole.com seem to all unite and connect together. So my question for you is, if these changes are taking place in the lyrics as you're suggesting versus the way that I remember them, are we able to reverse the lyrics and hear new things now? Have you ever thought about that? Probably not, huh?
I personally have not, but I've heard about the reverse speech and the lyrics you play backwards and hear satanic messages. I remember that back in the 80s and 90s. So I definitely believe there's something to that. I don't know, maybe it's like a subliminal type thing that we pick up on subconsciously. I remember I saw something in the 60s that was played at the end of the TV programming. They would put some messages across the board, And people have slowed it way down, and the letters are skipping and telling you to obey your government and this and that. So, I believe there's different tactics that are used to get information out.
Moneybags, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We're going to have to take another break, but quickly before we do, we'll go to the wild card line from the 813 area code. Go ahead, caller. You're on the line with Moneybags.
Hey, I'm Echo Hoodie calling from Tampa, Florida, and I just have a comment. I think the best Mandela effects, the one that really strikes me, and I think for each person they have their go-to. The ones that really strike me the most that Moneybags has covered pretty well is the Ed McMahon one and the Fruit of the Loom one. So I was wondering if, I know this has to do with music, but if Moneybags could briefly touch on those two, because those two are my favorite ones. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, caller. We'll address that coming up in the second part of tonight's broadcast. Of course, Moneybags always sticks around for a second hour. That's how much stuff there is, folks. Unbelievable. Moneybags, remember that question so we can get back to that. And caller 616 will come back to you after this break in just a few moments.
You are listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio. Stay tuned for live music, news, information, and talk radio.
You can help support this program by subscribing on YouTube to the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Follow along with notifications of our live shows, or see our weekly schedule at riponrabbithole.com. Thanks for being here. We will return back to the program in just a moment. Don't touch that dial.
Ripon Common Sense Radio with the Ripon Rabbit. Stick around, folks. Moneybag 73 is here tonight. We're just getting started with Mandela music.
Stay tuned for live music, news, information, and talk radio.
I just looked up.
If you were to tell me that this would be blowing my mind tonight, that the music I grew up in would be changing, I would tell you absolutely not. My guest in 2016 describes being hit by a ton of bricks by the Mandela effect. And if you're just joining us, you're going to hear from Moneybags 73 as we head into our second hour of the Mandela effect music. Now, sometimes we veer off track, but we do come back together because all of those Ripon rabbit holes lead to someplace. A big shout out to all of you joining us there at Ripon Common Sense Radio. Thanks so much for listening tonight. And if you're on YouTube, whether you're watching at Ripon Rabbit Hole or Moneybags 73, a big shout out to you guys. Moneybags has a huge following. We're keeping an eye on the chat room there. And of course, the open lines are available to you. That's 702-500-1658. That's 1658. 702-500-1658. Before we went to the break, Moneybags, we had a caller that addressed an interesting point. Do you have any comment on his call at this point?
Yes, I agree 100%. Fruit of the Loom and Ed McMahon, having worked for Publishers Clearinghouse, are two huge changes for me. There's so much reality residue with these two changes. Johnny Carson having gone on David Letterman with a giant check that says Publishers Clearinghouse, you won $1 million or whatever. And he hands the big check to Dave and says, sorry, Ed couldn't be here. Well, I had a comment from a vice president of Publishers Clearinghouse, and he said that Ed never went door to door. There were never a bunch of balloons. There was never big checks handed out. We've seen countless television shows where Ed shows up with a big check. I can't believe he was telling me that. One of the senior vice presidents of Publishers Clearinghouse. It's crazy. I always associated Ed McMahon with Publishers
entertainment
Clearinghouse.
industry as a whole, not just music. To the wild card line, our caller tonight from the 661, who's held on through the break. Go ahead. You're on the air with Moneybags 73.
Hey, Moneybags. How are you doing? I just wanted to say to Rip, when I was grabbing the phone number, you possibly just caused a retro effect by calling him Moneybags 37.
Did I really?
Yes, you did. So, and what retro causality is and this is, Moneybags is well known for this. As he presents these changes at the end of each of his clips, he would say, go create the reality that you want. And so what she was trying to explain with retrocausality is that we're always in the now moment. We think time is linear, only going forward, but what if it went in all directions? But back to the music. I was looking at his list, and I saw Led Zeppelin on there, Stairway to Heaven. Now, during the break, I was able to hear both of you, but I cannot hear, I almost said his first name. I can't hear him now, so I'll take the answer offline. I love that song. I mean, she's buying the Stairway to Heaven. I grew up in this music.
Do you know the number on the list, caller? Do you remember the number of that song?
Yeah, let me
hang on.
I think
there was a few Led Zeppelins.
It's Stairway to Heaven, and hold on. It's right up I was looking at his list before I called in. 46.
46. Thank you, caller.
And I'll
Have
take
a great evening. So 46, Stairway to Heaven. Now, this was part of our reverse speech show as well with backmasking. There's a curiosity here between perhaps those types of cross-pollinations between the two conversations. And I think what the caller is suggesting with Stairway to Heaven. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's hard for me to remember. I have so many songs. It's hard to remember the exact lyric change in each one. But in the end of the song, I can't sing it. But there's a part where he mentions gold, and if you listen to the original song now, it sounds like stone. So, but I'd have to go watch. I have a video on it. I mean, you could watch the video.
Well,
it's on my.
The interesting thing about that is that. Hold on. The interesting thing about that is that number 46, Led Zeppelin, the caller's call, Stairway to Heaven. You show 244 thumbs up and only 74 or 9 thumbs down. So whatever it was that you posed the question of regarding that song, 244 people agreed with you in the way that that effect took place. And that goes back to the science we're talking about here that you perhaps have developed. Because you have now data logged, documented, that we can go back and we can compare. I don't expect you to know exactly what the question of that lyric was at point 46. But like Dr. Cynthia says, the very fact that you're documenting this information and posting these videos on YouTube for your large, most beautiful community of followers to weigh in on their memories has some scientific implementation, does it not? Is that why you're doing this? Are you doing this to gather? I mean, where is Moneybags 73, 37, or 76 10 years from now?
Oh, wow. I guess I wish I could answer that. I'm not sure. I just felt like this was something that I had to do. I was fascinated by this, passionate. I enjoy, covering it. And it was such a hard thing to deal with. And I felt compelled to make my first video and then the next one, and it never stopped. At some point, I guess I'll have to stop making these, but this community has helped me just as much as they say that I've helped them. So,
and you have a fantastic community. I've got to say, shout out to the Mandela community there on Moneybags 73. Caller 803, you're on the air with Moneybags. Go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to ask, I really enjoy when you do the auditory ones where you hear the different sounds like the green needle and the brainstorm. And I wanted to know if you could maybe do some of those for the show tonight.
Ooh, interesting. Thank you, caller. Some specific request. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, that's something that I was hoping would come up. We need to be able to play a few clips. I don't know, maybe we could set something up in the next week because people need to hear. I can't explain with words what's going on with that. People need to be able to hear it. But through my research with the Mandela effect, I came across a whole other phenomenon, which is totally mind-blowing, that you can hear two totally separate things. It's not misheard lyrics. They sound nothing alike. You can hear like 2-3 words that are nothing like the other 2-3 words, and you can hear one way and then you can hear it another way, and you can pick what you want to hear, basically. Now, not everyone can do it. I showed one guy and he's like, I don't hear what you're saying. I'm like, okay, just think about this. And he couldn't hear it, but a lot of us can hear both things. So I'm working on a part 2. I just came across a few more examples. So there will be a part 2 video to that
now
for you.
On the call that you were on this week, somebody brought it up. It's called the McGurk effect. Is this what you're speaking of, where the McGurk effect is a perceptual phenomenon that demonstrates an interaction between hearing and vision? Now, vision is absolutely imperative in this illusion. And I will put this, it's not in the show notes right now, but I will, if you're listening on demand in podcast, rebroadcast, I will put a link to this video. And if you're listening live, you're going to want to come back and find this reference or just type it in yourself. The McGurk effect, that's MCGURC. Watch this phenomenal clip on YouTube. But that's not what you're talking about. This is not a case of misheard lyrics.
No, and it has nothing to do with visuals. This is not the McGurk effect. I looked that up, when I was starting to do this research.
Interesting. Go ahead, wild card line. That's what happens when you're on that long. Go ahead, 360. You're on the air with Moneybags.
Thank you. This is Rick from near Seattle. I was wondering, have you looked into this new thing that I'm finding? I watch another channel, Need Input with Blaze, and he's talking about how he's finding now new residue of the new realities. So, like now, Ed McMahon goes around with America Home Publishers and Dick Clark, and he's finding all kinds of new created residue, and it's almost like they're creating residue to make us sound like we really are misremembering. And Wikipedia pages are changing where they're adding in names for the reindeer so they match our memories, just in case you've heard about it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's the next game is to make us look even crazier?
Thank you, caller. Now, the caller is describing how perhaps they, and that's a big term of they, might try to make us out to be. And I picked up on this earlier, what the caller is saying from listening to one of the comments in your videos about the Mandela Effect movie, where somebody had commented, they're making us out to sound crazy. And of course, what the caller is saying, disinformation and this kind of campaign through especially mainstream media. You're not going to hear the type of broadcast you're hearing tonight on MSNBC or Fox or CNN. Is there a political motivation or perhaps agenda behind this type of disinformation to discredit us, to make us think that we're crazy?
Sure, something like that could be going on. I don't put a lot of stock into that myself. I don't put a lot into look what they're doing. Like, I don't put a lot into someone doing this to us. I believe this is something we're doing ourselves, and I believe it's a consciousness thing that's happening. Now, Ed McMahon, he did. That's what's always happened in the current reality, if you want to use that term. He was with Dick Clark, and they did work for American Family Publishers. That's what they did. So I didn't quite understand where you were talking about someone making that up. That's what happened. He never worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. He never worked for them, but we have the memory of him working for them. So it gets really complicated, and so many different people come at this at so many different angles. So, I'm just here trying to document my memories. I have my opinions, and I don't want to put down anyone else with their opinions. They all look at it from different angles, and I sort of look at the Mandela effect like I do at religion. I believe that religion has a needle that runs through all religions, and there's some truth in all the religions, and there's a needle that runs through all of them, that's sewing them all together. And I sort of feel that that's what's happening with the Mandela effect. I don't think you can just go in one direction and not look back.
But like the caller is suggesting, there is some sort of disinformation. There isn't an academic study that I'm aware of that is truly investigating the changes that you've documented, other than the research you've done. And again, I commend you, sir. Top hats off to you. Your collection of these Mandela effects, both music related and the 400 plus that you have, you, sir, deserve a round of applause. A big shout out, ones in both chat rooms for Moneybags, for stepping forward and having the gall to speak openly and publicly about this topic. Because what the caller is suggesting is a very sensitive thought moving forward in the next 10 years. Like I asked, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see the Mandela effect and its cultural impact in 10 years from today?
Well, personally, I believe we're in the apocalypse, which comes from a Greek word meaning the unveiling. And I believe that we're going to know what's going on. There's a lot of truths that are bubbling up to the surface, and I believe we're in a time of knowing as we shift into a new, I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but we shift into a new age. The last one, 2,160 years, is moving away, the age of belief. We're moving into an age of knowing. It's apocalyptic, which means the unveiling, and we're going to find out what's happening. That's my opinion. I know a lot of people that, they don't agree with that, but that's my opinion. But I believe that we're going to, at some point, it's not going to be able to be denied anymore. They're going to have to start talking about this. I understand why professionals don't want to come forward and say, hey, I remember this over here, or I remember this like this. They're going to put their their livelihood on the line. And a lot of people, who's going to do that? So I can see where doctors, nurses may be seeing things and like never say anything. No one in that position would mention anything. I've had people that are in positions of like pilots
Now,
who say that they come on and comment.
I'm putting it out there. You're gonna get people question marking Armageddon. When we go to that, doomsday type scenario, which for some, it's not doomsday. I get it. There's nothing, more welcomed than the second coming, if that is your belief. But you're going to get some opposition from people that don't understand what this Mandela effect means, and not just what it means to you or what it means to me or what it means to your 40,000 subscribers. What it means in general to them. They're going to challenge you, especially when they hear that word without understanding. To you, Armageddon means something completely different, because I can tell you're a believer and you have a belief that the second coming is representative of Armageddon, correct? Am I wrong?
Or the apocalypse. I don't know about so much Armageddon. The apocalypse, which to me means unveiling, doesn't mean Hollywood wants everyone thinking, in fear. Hollywood wants to keep people in fear, so they make all these movies about the end of the world having to do with Armageddon and the apocalypse. To me, the apocalypse is a positive thing.
Yeah. They're blending, they're mishing, and they're mashing. But this comes back to that doomsday scenario, to where fear is what can possibly be responsible for a large amount of thoughts. And I think you've done such a wonderful job, and again, my top hat's off to you, on taking a look at the brighter side and looking at, hey, these are really wild changes that we're documenting, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean that it's the apocalypse or Armageddon.
Right. No, I know that there's dark things going on. I mean, I follow a lot of stuff. I spent years looking at the Federal Reserve, who's not federal and has no reserves. And they, what's behind the Federal Reserve? It's a private corporation that runs the currency of our country. To me, that's dark. I don't want some private corporation running it. I don't know if I want Washington running it either, but that's why I've, become a proponent for the cryptocurrencies after I got away from my ignorance of cryptocurrencies, which I was in for a long time, but I studied it and now I'm a proponent of it. I'm behind cryptocurrencies now, but so I don't want to concentrate. That, to me, the Mandela effect saved me from that dark hole I was down studying the monetary history of this country and how it had been taken over. So to me, the Mandela effect is a positive thing. I know a lot of you don't agree with that, but it is. So that's,
well, again, when we start to get into the other changes, the things that are really mind-blowing, like shifting continents and shifting body parts and Bible verses that are in print in the King James Version that are completely changing, those are major. And I think we, focused on music tonight because music is that fabric that holds all of us together. There's no question that when John Lennon sang Imagine, he did so at a point in time that held the world together. It was a bit of glue for our world at that time. So, and if you tell me that there's any Mandela effect related to John Lennon and Imagine, I'm going to really flip out. But let's take
wait,
a really...
I got to stop.
Go ahead.
What's the video? Is Imagine the video where he's all in white and they walk into the white room with the white piano and Yoko's in
Yoko
white?
Ono.
What color is John wearing?
He's wearing white.
No. He's not
Are you
wearing
kidding?
white. I guess you'll have to go check that video out.
See, this is again.
I did
Folks,
a video on
if you
that.
haven't
That's
seen
like-
it and
you
you're
can draw
just
one
joining
on
us,
your own.
my guest is Moneybags73. He brought along with him a notebook of over 50 Mandela effect changes to music that you know and love. And you can visit that link. You can see those 3 pages of notes by visiting tonight's show notes at the bottom of this video or wherever you're listening. You'll be able to click over, and I want you to see that list. And if you have a Mandela effect change regarding music, or you've got a comment or even a question for Moneybags, he's here for just a few more moments, folks. You can ask it on air. Call in our studio, 702-500-1658. That's 702-500-1658. It's phenomenal. So let's take another song like that. Like Imagine. What is there another fabric musical song that has drastically changed? One that held our world together, that was glued during that period of time?
Well, we discussed the television shows like Mr. Rogers, All in the Family. We didn't even, time's gone by so fast, we didn't even get to touch on those. There's a cartoon. I don't know if you ever used to watch it, Catch the Pigeon. Catch the pigeon, catch the pigeon. Are you aware of that, AJ? You know that cartoon?
No, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I'm
That
sure
one's got me.
people do. Now it's Stop the Pigeon, Stop the Pigeon. I mean, that's changed. But Mr. Rogers, we can't not touch on Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. We all know that song. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Well, Sony Pictures put that as the title of their Tom Hanks Mr. Rogers film that was just released. And Tom, like Mr. Rogers, now comes through the door saying it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. So Tom sings this. I was wondering if he was going to sing this or the, but he sings this like Rogers always did. The was never in that song. It was this. But at the end of the movie, they sing on the train or whatever. There's a group of kids and they sing it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, just like I recall. So I'm glad that made it into the movie. But why title the movie It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood if Rogers for 30, 40, I don't know how many years he was on, always saying it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood? That's a huge Mandela effect.
Again, and it's so huge that if you are a product of watching that in that time frame, you really understand it. But then you're saying that there's another generation that knows it the other way. So we're split. Is that how it takes place? Is that how the effect works? Is that you're going to have, certain scenarios where if you were alive during that period, if you were one of those children gathered around PBS when Mr. Rogers would kick off his shoes and change his sweater, versus the millennials who probably didn't have that same experience. Is that where the clash comes in? Is that where the debate enters?
Well, the people who are, say, 30 years old and beyond seem to be affected by more things. My kids, they have a handful of Mandela effects that they see. They just don't have the memories from the 80s. Those 80s memories are so ingrained. However, you can't just say, well, you lived in the 80s. Of course, you're going to remember Joan Jett singing. There's plenty of comments on my video. People say, no, it was always standing. It was always dancing. They don't recall standing. It was saw them dancing there. That's history's on their side. It was always dancing, and that's what they recall. So one of the biggest questions with the Mandela effect is how come not everyone could see it? I've sat with some people and thrown 20 things at them, and only maybe one of them they question. Everything else, it's just the way that history says it's always been. So this isn't something we're experiencing. And I, that's one of my biggest questions. How come we're not all seeing it? And there's a whole flood of theories for why that is.
Out of 400 videos that you've put over YouTube since 2016, Moneybags, you brought along over 50 songs. I think we spoke about 4 tonight. Maybe 5. that's how time goes. Now, staying within the genre of music for just the last few moments here, let's go through bands and names of bands, because I know that's not part of the show notes. But you brought along bands that change. Hit me with the top 5, Moneybags. What bands and names of bands have changed?
Okay, real quick. Names of singers. The Queen of Disco, Donna
Summers.
Summers for me. Always been Summer. Madonna. Is Madonna her real name? Madonna Louise Ciccone or Ciccone? Do you recall that being her real name, or was that a stage name?
I always thought Madonna was a stage name.
Same here. There's a video clip of her on YouTube saying, "Nope, that's my given name. That's my name." So Madonna apparently is her name, according to her. Not Louisa Marie Ciccone, which I recall, Louisa, but she says it's Madonna. Megadeth, Death, Deth.
Death.
Exactly. That's my memory. It's always been Deth. I have a video where Dave Mustaine, the lead singer, one of the founders of Megadeth, there's a Capitol Records where it's spelled Death. Someone on Twitter sent him that and said, "Hey, what's up with this?" And he said, "Well, that's the original name." So the people that were all mad at me saying it's, huge Megadeth fans, always saying it's always been Deth. There's Dave Mustaine on Twitter saying, no, it started out as Death, which is interesting. And then I have a list of like 17 bands. Let me run through real quick. Beastie Boys, Eagles, Rhythmics, Carpenters, Goo Goo Dolls, Bee Gees, Dave Matthews Band, Ramones, Sex Pistols. I recall all of them having the word "the" as part of their title of their band, like the Doors, the Beatles, the Who.
The Rolling Stones.
I recall all of them with the Eagles, the Beastie Boys, the Eurythmics, the Carpenters. They all had "the" as part of their name. None of that list has the word "the" in their name. It's just Bee Gees. That's what's on their albums now. That's always been on their album.
I got to tell you, it's so much fun hanging out with you because time just goes so fast. We're getting to the bottom of the show here, and Moneybags 73 has been our guest tonight. If you're not following him on YouTube, you must do so now. Go to YouTube/Moneybags/users/Moneybags73. He has over 40,000 subscribers, folks, that vote every week. You're putting new videos up, are you not? I mean, almost every week, right?
Yeah, lately here it's been every day, every other day, but I had a period of time where I went almost 3-4 weeks without. But over the course of time, it's pretty much at least 1 or 2 a week over the course of almost 4 years here with the Mandela Effect.
I love it. I really am a huge fan, and I thank you so much for helping me grasp a little bit more of my own sanity. You've blown my mind every time you've been a guest on. I don't know that I have that much mind left. I really don't. And again, this is just scratching the surface of oodles and oodles of Mandela Effect topics we need to devote discussion time for. So will you come back again, maybe perhaps in the next couple weeks, or maybe in the fresh new year? 2020, what do you think of that?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to come on and discuss geography changes. Movie quotes. I have tons of reality residue for actors who remember their iconic lines like I do. Incorrect. It's mind-blowing. Finding interviews where actors will talk about the iconic line and they don't know their own iconic line.
I love it. December 10th is the big YouTube day. If you enjoyed this kind of content, I could sure use a subscription. I know my subscriptions aren't as high as yours are, with everybody fearing what's coming on the 10th. They're saying that perhaps these money less bag channels that don't have the monetized value could be getting kicked off soon. But Moneybags, it's a pleasure having you here. Anything you'd like to say tonight?
No, just thanks for having me on again. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy talking about the Mandela effect. Thanks for everyone that listened to the show.
Well, there you have it, folks. An evening of Mandela music with Moneybags 73. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. Wasn't it fascinating? You can join us again tomorrow night for a special discussion on anti-gravity, some future technology, perhaps extraterrestrial in nature. And we're going to give away that origami lamp. That's tomorrow night starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. We're here every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, so visit us at ripinrabbithole.com. Click on Listen Live and check our schedule. We update that every Monday night. So we'll have a whole new lineup for next Thursday through Sunday for you, posted Monday evening. Anyways, a big shout out and a thank you to my guest, Moneybags. Make sure, if you haven't followed him on YouTube, to do so. What a fantastic guest. We'll definitely be back often with Moneybags. But for Saturday night, December 7th, 2019, just a few days away from 2020. Can you believe it? Unfortunately, we're there. Anyways, thanks for being here. My name is AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. And until our rabbit paths again, I bid you a good evening, a good day, or a good morning wherever you are. From me to you, take care of yourself and each other. Good evening.
You try to talk to him, you see him disappear. Oh, they call him Mr. Rabbit. Oh, simply Mr. Rabbit. You've never seen such a creature like this. A human body and a rabbit face. Oh, they call him Mr. Rabbit.
Once there was an old man living in an old house down by the lake. Rumor says the man was hunting for rabbits just for fun. Since the day the rabbit disappeared for a while, then came back and cast a spell over the old man. So he looks like a rabbit too now.
Such a creature like this, a human body and a rabbit face. Oh, they call him Mr. Rabbit. Oh, Mr. Rabbit. Oh, Mr. Rabbit. Oh, they call him Mr. Rabbit.
You are listening to Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell Archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout-outs, your call-ins as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate The Art Bell Archives, live.
The Art Bell Archive Show. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Ripon Common Sense.